So I've done a lot of sketchbook videos on this channel before, and I think one of the most popular ones I've talked about is the shit book. So you might be wondering, what is the shit book? Well, let me tell you. So here are the many shit books that I have that have followed me throughout all of my student years as an art student up till being an adult working in the industry and now working as an independent artist. So let me explain to you what some of these are. So these are the shit books that I've used throughout my years as an art student, working in the industry and transitioning into the industry, and even transitioning out of the industry, because now I'm trying to be an independent artist, and now more than ever, the shit book is more important than you would think, because there are many useful reasons to have a shit book in your life, such as being able to dump out ideas, really just run through the first passes to see if a drawing is going to work or not, and to also just put your ideas out there so you can refer back to them later. So here are some of the many reasons why you might find having a shit book helpful in your life, especially if you're an art student trying to break into an art industry, already working in an art industry, or you're transitioning out of the industry to be independent, or you're already trying to be an independent artist. So this can go for students, professionals, and independent freelancers and artists. So let's first talk when you're an art student. This is one of the shit books I used as an art student when I was in CalArts, and most of the time when you're an art student, you will be doodling in class and be making plans for either your art projects for school, assignments, portfolio, or just planning any of your goals as a growing artist. So in this shit book I did back as a student in art school, I pretty much just always illustrated, people in my classrooms or people in my life, and whenever I was doodling in class, I would just draw my own characters or make lists of different project ideas I had in mind or art challenges. So for example, Inktober was one of the things that I was planning back in this shit book before I even started posting on Instagram. And when I was planning for things for Inktober at that time, I just wrote down all of the words and the ideas I had in this book. And I also just doodled things that, would contribute to my student films, because whenever I was in class and I was thinking, I would be like, hey, I have an idea for my school assignment, and I would just put it down in my shit book when I had the chance. And the reason why I call these shit books instead of sketchbooks is because this is the place for you to be messy. This is the place for you to just not make anything look pretty. It's a sandbox for you to experiment with ideas and different drawings and styles, and not be afraid of how shitty it looks. And that's why it's called a shit book, whereas I feel like most people try to treat sketchbooks like this beautiful completed work of art, which yes, there's a time and place for that, but you will always need a place for you to play out ideas and just lay down the first pass rough idea you have of anything so that you can kind of plan out how it might play out later on. So then next is kind of a continuation of an art student's shit book, and this is the one that I had while I was interning at Disney Animation and also planning for my 4th year student film at CalArts. But on top of that, in this shit book, I also just pretty much did my next set of Inktober's at that time back in 2017. And also on top of that, I would do life drawings and figure drawings in this shit book. So in a way, this shit book is slightly a little bit more elevated than this one, because I include actual studies and things that I might actually eventually use for something else in the future, but it doesn't matter if it's in a rough or incomplete state. So I would say that the difference between this shit book and this shit book is that this one is mostly for rough ideas, just planning out some thumbnails for bigger projects and making lists, whereas this one actually has some drawings of life drawings, character designs or different doodles that I actually might just use as an official post on Instagram, or I might actually create a collection of work based on the drawings in this shit book. So in a way, I treat the rough sketches in this book as completed works. So moving on to the next shit book. This is kind of the half art student shit book and the half professional artist shit book, because you see, the thing is, I started this book when I was just a 4th year in art school, and I kind of stopped it midway, and then I picked it up back again when I was a working professional, because, you know, I was just like, hey, I need a place to write down ideas or draw some rough sketches, but I don't want to just start a new sketchbook or use a blank sheet of paper. And I honestly try my best to avoid wasting sketchbooks. So what I did was I just basically repurposed what was once my school planner for my student films and my assignments to now my shit book. So basically what I'm trying to say with this shit book is that a shit book can be anything. You don't need to just get a blank sketchbook and just call it a shit book. You can pick up any random book in your life that maybe you just never even finished the remaining half of the pages of and turn it into a shit book. Because let me tell you, once you just get a sketchbook or a blank journal completed in whatever state it is, there is just this sense of gratification you get from it. And the point of having a shit book at the end of the day is not having any pressure about how pretty the book it is itself, how like consistent the material inside is. You're not supposed to give a shit, because you're just here to play with ideas in your sandbox and not maintain this perfect pretty image. Like, literally look at this book. It's so dirty. There's like stains and everything on it, and even on the back there's like marks and stuff, because the more you treat it like shit, the more willing you will be to actually lay down a line in there and not care. So then moving on to one of my first shit books that I ever used as a full-on working professional. Like, this one was kind of a half-half situation. This one is just entirely me as a working professional in the animation industry for the first time. So this is the place where I pretty much planned out my first like run of Instagram comics when I first did Succubishes. And I would say that this shit book, the intention of it is to just lay down all of your personal ideas, project ideas, or things you had in your mind, even though that's not where you are at the moment. You might be working another job, you might be still at school, and sure, no matter what you're doing, this is the place where you are planning your ultimate dream for what you want to do. And without this shit book, I would not be here. Without all of the ideas that I put in here, these are what ultimately became Succubishes on Instagram, and then eventually became MEESH the Bad Demon, and then all of these other comics that I eventually made. So in this shit book, I pretty much just planned out, you know, what is it I ultimately want to do with my personal art? What type of things do I want? I kind of write down the template and the plan for how I want to execute these ideas. And throughout the rest of this book, I just play with comic ideas, thumbnails, I make lists and jot down dialogue ideas and different types of compositions and character expressions that I want to include in my future comics. So moving on to the next shit book. The shit books, let me tell you, they just get shittier from this point onward, because that's the point. If your shit books are just becoming sloppier and messier, you're probably understanding the point of a shit book. So this is almost a purely writing shit book. Like, there are barely any drawings in here. And honestly, as an artist, you might think that all you ever need to do in your shit books or sketchbooks is just draw. But no, starting from where I came from like these sketchbooks, these were almost purely illustration shit books. And now we're at the point where it's almost purely writing. And the point is sometimes your thoughts come out better in words before they become pictures. And sometimes writing actually helps elevate your art a little bit more, especially when you know what type of words you want to use or what type of feeling you want to portray. And if you're a comic artist or a storyteller, writing is going to play a really huge important role in your work, and that's why I have almost a purely writing shit book. So in here, yeah, I still do plan some drawings and illustrations, but for the most part, it is just a purely planning thing. Because even when you think, oh, I have an idea in my head, you don't really actually do anything about the idea until you put it into a physical form. And once you put it into a physical form, you will always kind of refer to it again or have a place to refer to when you actually want to start taking action on it. And lastly, that brings me to my shit book today, which is pretty much a conglomeration of everything I've done in all of my previous shit books. Like, you know, I've started from just almost purely doing art and illustrations in these shit books, but eventually it got to a point where whatever I create in these books is to help assist me for future projects. This is not the place for completed ideas or anything, but I will still doodle and draw. I continue to draw and plan out thumbnails for future comic ideas, but here I also continue making a lot of lists, a lot of plans and schedules that I have in my mind, and this is the place where I brainstorm them. So even if the things I write in this shit book don't happen, that's okay, because it was already kind of a sloppy mess when I first laid these lines down. So in this shit book, I also don't just plan out my art like goals with how I improve or what I'm gonna do project-wise, but I also just plan out how I'm going to be able to plan out my career as an artist, and just how I'm going to plan out the different things rotating in my life, from, you know, my animation career, my publishing career, to social media stuff. I plan all of those different things in here, and this is kind of just a brain dump place for me to, you know, eventually refer back to, and if I want, I can use old ideas that were never used, or even try to redo old ideas that I've done. I feel like a lot of artists have this pressure to be like, oh, I already did that idea though before, so I shouldn't do it again. Well, no, I think you should always try to redo a new rendition of something to see how differently you approach it now versus before. And yeah, at the end of the day, I feel like a lot of artists are very prone to trying to make things look beautiful and make it look exactly as it appears in their mind. But the truth is that most of the time things will play out differently than you planned or intended to. And I feel like shit books are ultimately a way of helping you loosen up and remember that, hey, everything is just, you know, an idea. You don't have to be perfect with everything you do. If it doesn't work, just do it again and try different attempts at it. And if you're afraid to share that all online or share it to people, just draw it in your shit book. This is a place where you don't have to show anybody like what you're doing. You don't have to show anyone your work. It's your safe space for you to experiment and play with things until you feel like you're comfortable enough to create something to show the world, which is why I have a lot of these thumbnails in here for comics and stuff, and I would never post these on my Instagram as they are, but it is a very important part of the process for me to even know that the idea is gonna play out or work the way that I want it to. So if anything, I do share the thumbnails that I make in these sketchbooks on my Patreon. So for any of you who are interested and want to see the behind the scenes of how I approach my artwork, check out my Patreon, where I also offer Patreon email consultations, which only has a limited few slots. But, you know, if you are interested, keep an eye out for when a slot opens. But if you would like to just do a one-time email consultation situation, I do have that on my Patreon shop. If you feel like you only need to do it one time, or maybe you just need to do it once, and if you want to do it again like a few months later, the option is there. So I hope this video helped you all just kind of think about ideas you could do with a shit book, or ways that you can just kind of have less pressure in finishing a sketchbook without making it look beautiful, because there's a lot of, you know, beautiful sketchbooks out there. I have done those myself, where I only do completed sketchbooks that look beautiful and all colored, but you know, there's a time and place for everything, and not everything you do needs to look beautiful. Anyway, thank you for watching this video, and I'll see you all in the next one.